Okay, that last word there was Mandy Golmasti, the Minister of Indigenous Services. Before that, an at-length press conference from Prime Minister Mark Carney really had a couple of components to it. A celebration of the significance of the passage of Bill C-5, his major projects legislation that was a centerpiece of his pitch to Canadians, at least in concept, but with a lot of reassurance to Indigenous peoples and groups who have been skeptical at the process, the way this has been pushed through in terms of very limited upfront consultation time with them, then rapid passage through the House of Commons and presumably the Senate, with significant reassurance from the Prime Minister and from his minister on the need for summits and listening, and that they will take into full consideration the concerns of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. And also an admission there by Mark Carney that maybe they haven't been explicit enough at this up front, and that there were some learnings there that they needed to do a better job on this in terms of reminding people who have serious stakes in this that they will be listened to and that they have been heard. We're going to get quick thoughts from Greg, Fred, and Mel before we have to let them go. Greg, your thoughts on what we just heard there from Mark Carney?
Yeah, my beginning commentary to you today was concerning around that communication, and I think the minister said it, best. And the one kind of issue around this bill was just handled where you have very specific timing for when these meetings will happen. Mm-hmm. The other bigger picture, David, it's indicative of a little moment in the House of Commons not that long ago when Prime Minister Mark Carney walked across and shook Andrew Scheer's hand, and unless he's in need of some insurance. That is a message about what happened today and in the last couple of weeks of this very, very fast Parliament. Right. I remind you that the four of us sat together a year ago Tuesday for very lengthy coverage of the Toronto St. Paul's by-election. Mm-hmm. And that was the beginning of the end of the Trudeau administration. And I look in 1 year, the turnaround of the Liberal Party under Prime Minister Mark Carney is nothing short of remarkable. And they've got this very significant piece of legislation passed. Okay, but
Fred, the turnaround on the rhetoric and the focus, it's been all about the economy. Today was all about free, prior, and informed consent, proper consultation, respecting treaties, and reaching out to groups who voiced frustration and skepticism the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, this was not a victory press conference where, hey, my key legislation has just passed the House that I ran on and was elected on. This was an issue management press conference. And I will say, I'll give full marks, I think they did it very well. I thought they did a good job really explaining the situation and showing that they are serious about having Indigenous consultation as part of this. So full marks on that. But this was not a victory lap. This is the beginning of the process, and a big part of it was issues management.
Yeah, Buckley Belanger, Wade Grant, Mandy Golmasti, Rebecca Chartrand, Rebecca Alty, all there. Mel, member, Indigenous cabinet ministers and secretaries of state. What did you make of what we saw there from the Prime Minister? A bit of a shift from the beginning of the week, it seems.
I'm actually going to disagree with all three of you on this one. I thought the Prime Minister's opening remarks were quite strong. Yeah, I know. I thought his opening remarks were quite strong. I think the way that he responded to those questions would leave me feeling a certain type of way, particularly the questions around, what do you say to folks who say you've broken the trust, to Indigenous communities who say you've broken the trust? And he basically said, this is positive, it's not negative, almost trying to reset the way that these communities were saying that they were feeling. I don't think that that's a good sign. I will say, though, I think the minister did a great cleanup job. I think the way that she ended that and was very precise in what exactly that looked like, I think was maybe a good way to end it. The other comment that maybe I would just have about what crisis looks like as a reason why we need to do this. It almost felt like we need to do this no matter what because we're in crisis. And, he talked about crisis, just go to look in Sault Ste. Marie and go look to Hamilton. Well, he had an announcement this week that talked about some of those measures to respond to that crisis. And none of those measures actually helped workers directly in a way that would help them, today, this week, or when they do potentially lose their jobs. So I do think he has to find a way, whether it be with Indigenous peoples who are expressing concern or with workers who are expressing concern, that you're actually able to deliver for them and not just, for the economy, for businesses, et cetera. That's maybe my take from his remarks.
Okay, look, we've kept you three long enough. We've got to let you go so you can start your weekend. We're going to bring in our next group after this, but Greg McKecker, Melanie Richer, and Fred Delory, always good to see you.